Saratoga is an early 50s game. Probably, I'm not sure exactly the date. I don't remember it, but it is a game that, for its historic purpose, is the first game that had pop bumpers. There are two types of bumpers. There's what's called dead bumpers, which you hit it and it gives you a score number. You know, it gives you 10,000, 5,000, whatever. A pop bumper is a bumper that actually, when it hits the skirt of the bumper, it shoots the ball out because it actually plunges down and shoots the ball. So Saratoga has the vital information of being the first game that actually had pop bumpers. But it's an interesting game as well because it kind of is a little bit of history about flippers. When flippers were invented, and that's part of our information, we have a little history walk. It came about not somewhat by accident, but they used a part that existed, which I found always interesting, you know, because when I started collecting pinball machines, I didn't know a lot about the history, and there's very little written about the history. So of course, when I started collecting them for the purpose of building a museum, I said, well, the important parts are finding the firsts of things. So it tells the history of the development of pinball. So I said, of course, the most important game would probably be the first game that ever had flippers, and that's Humpty Dumpty, which is a Gottlieb game. So I did more research and more research, and they had called them flipper bumpers. And I went, flipper bumpers? Why? And Saratoga tells me why. Because what existed before the flipper were these bumpers that were in the shape of, quote, what we now have as a flipper. So they took those existing bumpers and electrified them. And that's why they called them flipper bumpers. It didn't last very long, and they switched, of course, to flipper. But Saratoga has two bumpers that when you play the game, you're assuming those are actually flippers. But they're not. They just sit there. So you say, what the heck is that? What's going on there? And then you realize that is the early form of the use of that bumper as just a bumper. The ball would hit it and it would bounce off of it. It wouldn't move. And below, at the bottom of the game is where the flippers actually are. And Williams, when they started using flippers, I guess their electronics were not as developed as Gottlieb's, because both flipper buttons, one on the left side of the game, one on the right side of the game, do the exact same thing. It's not like if you hit the left flipper button, it hits the flipper moves on the left, and the right flipper button This, you press the left flipper button and both of them work. Press the right flipper button and both of them work. So it's kind of a prehistoric way of using the flipper.